Hello, my friends. Today I wanted to make a little bit longer recording, this one closer to 45 minutes or an hour, to talk about three main details. One, the power of daily meditation. Two, the power of having a vision in business. And three, the power of devotion. And to do that, I'm going to read from three or four different books this afternoon. One of them here is The Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam, The Wine of the Mystic, translated by Edward Fitzgerald with commentary by Paramahansa Yogananda. The second one is my book, A Fish in Water Athirst. And the third one is my most recent lesson. I'm just going to read one line from that, and that's what I'm going to start with. This lesson is lesson 47 from Self-Realization Fellowship, The Life of a Yogi versus a Business Life, and I'm only going to read a quote, so one of Yogananda's quotes. Knowing the universal laws of prosperity and success, recharging your business battery from the cosmos, serving the welfare of all, practicing plain living and high thinking, these are the yoga ideals of business. They will go down in history as the immortal plan for happiness. And that comes from this lesson called The Life of a Yogi versus a Business Life. It's one of the advanced lessons, and now that I've been practicing Kriya Yoga for many years, and I'm working on Kriya Yoga 4, I thought I would share just a quote from that from Yogananda and move ahead. So I wanted to take a look now at this particular publication by Self-Realization Fellowship, The Wine of the Mystic, which is a number of the quatrains of Omar Khayyam, translated by Edward Fitzgerald, and then with a commentary by Paramahansa Yogananda. I wanted to read to you quatrain 4 and the commentary on that and tie it together with the art of living and the art of living well in business and in sharing with our neighbors. So the quatrain 4 from our friend Omar Khayyam reads this way. Now the new year, reviving old desires, the thoughtful soul to solitude retires, where the white hand of Moses on the bough puts out, and Jesus from the ground suspires. And we have here given a glossary of terms. The first one being, and this being moving towards Easter, we have here some flowers and reflection here in the mirror. Just a very simple setup that reminds us of the power of this season to look forward to those resurrection and healing thoughts that come, which are really embedded in this particular quatrain. So the glossary for quatrain 4 gives us this: the new year, not just January, but also February, on into March and so on, the beginning of the year in which we find ourselves immersed in this light that helps us to change our bad habits into good habits and so on. So the glossary here: new year is the new dawn of wisdom, old desires, the age-old longing of the soul in quest of spirit, the thoughtful soul, the soul that reasons and discriminates, solitude, the inner silence of spiritual consciousness, white hand, the purified consciousness, bough, universal wisdom or Christ consciousness, and ground, the cosmic delusion of mortality. So this poem operates on two levels, at least. One, the spiritual, and two, the practical. So let's take a look at the quatrain one more time, and then we'll look at the spiritual interpretation given to us by Paramahansa Yogananda. Now the new year, reviving old desires, the thoughtful soul to solitude retires, where the white hand of Moses on the bough puts out, and Jesus from the ground suspires. The spiritual interpretation that's given reads this way. The awakening of new wisdom in man revives old divine desires of the soul to quest for God, and the introspecting and discriminating soul retires to the inner solitude of silence, the inner stillness in which the purified consciousness of Moses touched the bough of wisdom, and Jesus quickened by its breath of immortality, awoke and rose from the entombing sod of delusion. And there's a footnote here. Strictly speaking, the soul, being a pure reflection of spirit, is all-knowing and has no need to reason and discriminate. And then the practical application, which many might be more interested in the beginning at least, is this right here, given on page 11. When wisdom dawns on you, awakening the desire to understand the mystery of your soul, don't put it off. Retire to the inner sanctum sanctorum of silent peace, wherein all great souls have entered by the gate of meditation and found wisdom and emancipation. So if we feel on our heartstrings a pulling, a tugging for something more, for the better life, for more wealth, for more health, for greater happiness, we know that we can find that through guided meditation, through self-effort, through a distinction made by the soul as it seeks the higher path. And the practical application goes on. The thirst for understanding can be quenched only by drinking new wisdom daily from the well of discrimination. The burning desires of incarnations are alleviated only by soothing dews of peace collected in the deep bowl of solitude. Moses, Jesus, you, and I, all beings can find the ever sought for solace in the silence of the soul. This quatrain has also a mundane significance. The advent of a new year revives old desires to succeed on the path of life. Most individuals fail to garner the rare wild blossoms of success because they do not deeply deliberate and search long enough to discover where they lie hidden in the forest of difficulties. And in a way, I think this, at least for me, is the central idea, so I'm going to read that sentence a couple of times more. Most individuals fail to garner the rare wild blossoms of success because they do not deeply deliberate and search long enough to discover where they lie hidden in the forest of difficulties. So if you've ever been in a forest and you've been looking for a particular rare flower, or perhaps a specific kind of fruit, a mulberry or a blackberry, or maybe a specific species of mushroom, and you've really sought hard and you've gone out, maybe it's your third time going into the forest trying to find this particular flower, and voila, finally you find it. I've had that experience myself, looking for the rather rare species of specific flowers I can think of now that I won't mention the names of. But as you look along the path and you begin to find specific kinds of patterns for seeking, for finding, for sharing the truth, for growing together, for patience, for patronage, for Paramahansa devotion, and so on, you begin to realize that there is this universal pattern, and it is calling to us even now. So let's look at that sentence one more time and we'll move on with the practical application. Most individuals fail to garner the rare wild blossoms of success because they do not deeply deliberate and search long enough to discover where they lie hidden in the forest of difficulties. And here he's speaking specifically about success in life, success as an entrepreneur, as a philanthropist, as a devotee. And if we apply that last principle, success as a devotee means finding divine union. So how do we find that rare wild blossom of success for divine union? I would say through aligning our will with the will of God and persevering on that path daily, despite any kind of setbacks we may experience, and daring to share our success stories with others and also our failures and our hopes. I think this is just honest living. So we'll read again. Most individuals fail to garner the rare wild blossoms of success because they do not deeply deliberate and search long enough to discover where they lie hidden in the forest of difficulties. Everyone who seeks success, even as great men have sought it and found fulfillment, should retire often into the silence and introspect on his problems. By discrimination and meditation, he can make his mind receptive to the intuitive guidance of the soul and plan his life accordingly. Problems that have seemed insoluble will unravel their mysteries in the nook of solitary thoughtfulness. So coming back again, finally, to the quatrain, let's meditate very deeply on it and see how it will help us find what we are seeking in life. Now the new year, reviving old desires, the thoughtful soul to solitude retires, where the white hand of Moses on the bough puts out, and Jesus from the ground suspires. And the ground being the cosmic delusion of mortality, the ordinary type of thinking from which we must be resurrected. And for this one, there is no illustration, but for the next, the fifth quatrain, there is a beautiful illustration. And let's take a look at that now. Perhaps we'll just read a few of these quatrains in order, and you can watch what seems valuable to you, and then I'll conclude with a couple of pages from my own book and a commentary on those. So here's the illustration we have for quite an intricate one. Quatrain 5, the 7-ringed goblet of success in meditation, success in life. Remember, this book is titled Wine of the Mystic and is a commentary on the quatrains of Omar Khayyam, his much beloved spiritual quatrains. Iram indeed is gone with all its rose, and Jamshed's 7-ringed cup where no one knows, but still the vine her ancient ruby yields, and still a garden by the water blows. So here we have an interpretation again. Iram is represented as outward or sense-conscious state of man's mind and life. The rose is the temporary sense pleasures. Jamshed is the soul's kingly consciousness of infinity, and the 7-ringed cup, which we see again here, beautifully illustrated with these 7 different dimples or 7 different globes on the handle, is given as the cerebrospinal receptacles with its 7-ring-like centers of consciousness in life, that is the 7 chakras in the spine. Through these 7 plexuses, the soul's life and consciousness descend from spirit into the limitations of the body and must ultimately ascend into the freedom of the infinite. Where no one knows, the average person is unaware of the existence of the spinal centers and of their spiritual significance. Vine is the soul, and ancient ruby, the age-old soul bliss, the fruit of the ruby, the grapes of the soul vine. Garden is self-realization, blooming into spiritual qualities, and water is the wisdom. So again, let's look at the quatrain so that we can begin to commit that to heart. Iram indeed is gone with all its rose, and Jamshed's 7-ring cup where no one knows, but still the vine her ancient ruby yields, and still a garden by the water blows. Just the beauty of this architecture of spirit, this plain living and high thinking of this particular poem, this particular poet, and his stirring metaphors guides us deeper if we can just listen to the music of that particular quatrain. So let's read that yet one more time, and then we'll go on to the spiritual interpretation and the practical application. This way we can digest all that we have taken in and slowly proceed on as we grow together. Iram indeed is gone with all its rose, and Jamshid's seven-ring cup where no one knows. But still the vine her ancient ruby yields, and still a garden by the water blows. Iram, outward or sense-conscious state of man's mind and life, rose, temporary sense pleasures, and so on. Ancient ruby, the age-old soul, water, wisdom, garden, self-realization. So we can see as the water of self-realization comes into the garden of life, and these beautiful fruits are produced along the 7 chakras of the spine until we get to the final chakra here in the brain, which blossoms forth with all the sweetness of the grapes of devotion. There we find the grapes of sweetness. We find our lives growing mature, and we develop this sense of unity with all that we are participating in life, in business, and in friendship. So here, the spiritual interpretation, and this book was stored in with some incense, I think. It has a beautiful aroma. It's wonderful to read. Spiritual interpretation of the Dharma of this book. When in deep meditation, man withdraws his outward consciousness, there goes with it all the rose or pleasure associated with the senses and their desires. Yet the kingly soul consciousness of infinity remains, engrossed within, quaffing the blissful, divine consciousness from the cerebrospinal cup, whose 7 rings are secreted from mortal gaze and unknown to ordinary consciousness. And here we have a footnote. Yogic treatises define the 7 spiritual centers as chakras, or wheels, or padmas, lotuses, the spokes or petals of which radiate life and consciousness to the body. I'll skip the end of that. Unmindful of the absence of sense pleasures, such a man beholds an enthralling inner garden of spirit, blossoming with fragrant soul qualities and sparkling with ever-flowering waters of wisdom. From the soul vine he plucks ruby grapes of self-realization, revealing in their sweet taste of age-old, ever-new bliss. Practical application. By deep yoga meditation, transfer the soul's consciousness from fleshly sense pleasures to the inner spiritual perceptions of the 7 cerebrospinal centers. And how can this be done? Through Kriya Yoga, through Raja Yoga, through the highest meditative concentration. In the outer sense garden grow, I skipped a line. Therein the soul intuitionally experiences the intoxicating joy of self-realization. When the mind is fully mature, it's able to grasp directly its true nature and role, and to live out that role spontaneously, for a role that brings bliss. In the outer sense garden grow perfumed blossoms of short-lived pleasures, but the inner garden of consciousness, the soul secretly nurtures flowering qualities whose fragrant joy never fades. Earthly blossoms brighten man's mind for a while, but the petals of soul pleasures inspire eternally. All the pomp and power of man's kingdom of life may fade away, and all receptacles and instruments of kingly pleasures may be taken from him. Yet he can always find happiness when he roams by the healing waters of wisdom and understanding in the garden of soul bliss. Often when persons fall from a state of plenty into poverty, or from success to failure, they sink in utter despair, seeing nothing to cling to. Some become so despondent they are unable to find contentment in anything. Failure cripples the subtle imagination of hope for future success. But by wisdom and discrimination, man can learn that happiness is not dependent on external circumstances. Rather, it is to be found in the simpler joys of life, and most of all in the deep new bliss of deep meditation. ever new bliss of deep meditation. Though destiny wrest away all earthly pleasures, man can still be happy by clinging to the simple, true, and lasting soul joys. They come by deep thinking, introspection, spiritual inspiration, and meditation. Gather, therefore, not only wholesome joys from the garden of material life, learn also with your loved ones to wander in the garden of meditation. And we'll do a meditation in a moment. And self-realization, and there gather the joy everlasting. So that is our fifth quatrain. And we'll return to that briefly after a short guided meditation now. So as we prepare ourselves for meditation, I guess I look a little like a monk today. I cut my hair. Once a monk, always a monk. As we dive deep together, we can choose to focus on an image. I have here a picture of the Divine Mother, Mahalakshmi. You can use an image of a saint of your choice, Paramahansa Yogananda, Jesus Christ, somebody that you truly trust, a form of the divine you trust. So you can choose to gaze upon that and then internalize it, see it inside. As you sit up straight with your feet flat on the floor and your hands at the juncture between the waist and the thighs, the abdomen and the thighs. Breathing in, focusing on the point between the eyebrows. Inhaling deeply, visualizing the beloved there, or a spiritual light or star, whatever form of the beloved you choose to identify with or to concentrate upon. Breathing in again, bringing a smile to your face, and exhaling. Breathing in again, giving thanks for this moment. Focusing again at the point between the eyes, visualizing there the light of the spiritual star. Of the third eye, or a healer or saint. And we'll just do a few more breaths together now. Exhaling. Inhaling. now pausing. To soak up that joy, that we might share it with others, that bliss, that pure divine love. Letting ourselves sit for a few moments in the silence, forgiving and receiving any forgiveness we need. Pressing on confidently into the future with great love and devotion, with success and with compassion. With all health, wealth, and happiness. And take a moment to, if some questions come up, raise those questions to the Beloved, to Christ, Krishna, Paramahansa Yogananda, the Divine Mother, the Eternal Father, whatever form you trust the most. Diving ever deeper into the silence. We'll pause in that silence now for a few minutes. Is there to savor that silence now just for another short moment? Knowing that we have received answers to our questions, give thanks and remain at peace within with a steady mind. a good deep breath, concentrating on the love of God. An exhalation. And we have come to the 30-minute mark. So, I would like to take a few moments now, and you can come back to this 30-minute mark if you have watched a lot now and felt saturated. Come back to this point. I wanted to share now a game fish or a chapter on fishing and actually diving and meditation. We have here from my book let's see. Or here, we'll read on a diving adventure in the Bahamas. An invisible shark. When I was a very small child, even before I had started school, I would snorkel with my father in the coral reef that stretched out behind our seawall in the Florida Keys. Even from shore, one could spot myriad fishes and corals easily. And when the sun was right, we could tune deeply in. I could enter into the living reef and see with my innermost eye many unique and wonderful things. Diving with my father, I gradually gained a greater knowledge of the reef, surf, and of the world itself. When we moved further north to Illinois, I was no longer able to dive except occasionally at a friend's pool or possibly at a beach during vacation. But I took on the challenge of deep diving once again when I visited the Bahamas one summer with my cousins Josh and Matt at their kind invitation. My cousins were veteran divers and I could get down to 15 meters or more on a single breath. They coached me carefully until I was able to dive almost as deeply as they could during our adventures together. I owe a debt of gratitude to my cousins. During our trip they came to feel as close as brothers to me, deepest blessings. Matt and Josh both love to spearfish and they introduced me to the sport. I think I managed 1 or 2 fish and a lobster, but I found myself mostly interested in diving for its own sake. On the 2nd or 3rd day of our trip together, we ventured out towards some large coral heads that were reputed to hold black grouper, a favorite quarry of spearfishermen. We managed to spot a couple of fish, but nothing big. As we came back around the coral head, Matt spotted a large fish and took a shot. His spear impaled the grouper but didn't kill it. The fish swam into a cave, wedging itself under a dark black rock. I watched all of this unfold with my beginner's eye. Matt's fish remained holed up in the rocks. He dove down to the grouper repeatedly in 20 feet of water, attempting to dislodge it. The fish had managed to wedge itself tightly against the jagged lips of heavy stones. After several dives, Matt successfully extricated the fish from its hiding place. He and Josh swam slowly to the boat with their hefty prize. I was treading water near the motor as they approached. It had been exciting to see Matt emerge from the dark grouper cave, trophy in hand. As my cousins moved closer, I pulled out an underwater camera and clicked a few pictures as they came into view. Then I spotted something unusual. A fish cruised fast between us, dark and aggressive. It was a shark. The unwelcome form was moving so fast that I hadn't been able to identify it till it was directly in front of me. Plunging my spear forward, and I'll pause there, and we'll come back to this, maybe in the next film or maybe in this one. You'll have to stay tuned to see what happened with the shark. So let's take a look again now at the idea of meditation and how it empowers us to become stronger, more robust, more fearless. I've been thinking about this theme quite a bit recently, and I've written this song called Fearless Blues. I've put a number of versions of it up on this site and invite you to watch those and let me know what you think. I wanted to also play some songs on this particular video. Now we could play something perhaps devotional and then come back to, at the end of the show, Fearless Blues in improvisation. But for now, we'll do a very devotional song, something to the Divine Mother, who is with us and within us. I often sing to the form of God as Divine Lakshmi, whom we see here. This is a card that I picked up at the Amma convention a couple years ago. Sri Lakshmi is the goddess of wealth, beauty, happiness, purity, and good fortune. She is depicted as a beautiful four-armed divine goddess of golden complexion sitting or standing on a full-bloomed lotus and holding a lotus bud which stands for purity, beauty, and fertility. Her four hands represent the four ends of human life: dharma or righteousness, karma or desire, artha or wealth, and moksha or liberation. So as we enjoy those four paths, righteousness, karma or pure desire in this case, artha or wealth, we find ourselves finally able to pursue the highest of divine union or liberation. Engrossed is the bee of my mind on the blue lotus feet of my divine mother. Engrossed is the bee of my mind on the blue lotus feet of my divine mother. Divine mother, 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 my divine mother. Engrossed is the bee of my mind on the blue lotus feet of my divine mother. Engrossed is the bee of my mind on the blue lotus feet of my divine mother. Divine mother, 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 my divine mother. Engrossed is the bee of my mind on the blue lotus feet of my divine mother. Engrossed is the bee of my mind on the blue lotus feet of my divine mother. Divine mother, 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 my divine mother. So let's take a look again at this wisdom of the master meditators, especially Yogananda, since that's the one that I've been following the most closely. Here's a picture of him playing on an organ here, playing a devotional song, perhaps to the Divine Mother, perhaps the one we just played since it was penned by him, as I understand. Here he is in California, in Los Angeles. Here he is somewhere in California in these two photos as well, I believe. um, during his last days at the India Center in Lake Shrine in California, in Los Angeles. And I believe Hollywood Center here, yes. So, the sayings of Yogananda tell us here, from page 70, Sayings of Yogananda, referring to the biblical passage, "Behold, I stand at the door and knock. If any man hear my voice and open the door, I will come to him, and will sup with him, and he with me." The Master said, "Christ is seeking to enter the door of your heart, but you have latched it with indifference." So if we are really eager to find success, Yoganandaji, who is a true saint, and he wouldn't deceive us, tells us the most important thing for our success is to align our will with the divine will. So if we want to find success, we have to learn how to do that. And that comes through prayer and meditation, through devotional chanting, and through sharing with one another. I've found for myself that there are days that are so inspirational, and they might start with some kind of major challenge. But if we can get up and meditate and take some time, take an hour with the Lord, even take in the beginning 2 or 3 minutes with the Lord of the universe, and give to him our soul call and say, "I desire to find your will, to know your will, and to follow after it," then we will be able to begin to really make changes in our lives that will inspire us. And they will become a soothing river of purification, a soothing river of enlightenment, which will help us to dream into reality those dreams of success, those highest dreams, until we dream no more, until we're fully awake in the reality of the cosmic consciousness, which is already within our brain cells. But what is necessary there, as he points out here, is that we must give up indifference. He says, "Christ is seeking to enter the door of your heart, but you have latched it with indifference." So how do we overcome that indifference? Again, namely through love, through devotion, cultivating a lifestyle of meditation and love. Let's take a moment now to come back to one last quatrain, and then we can conclude our story about the shark and do a closing song. So if we want to take a quick look at about devotion and inspiration, we can look at quatrain 65. "Then said another with a long-drawn sigh, My clay with long oblivion is gone dry. But fill me with the old familiar juice, methinks I might recover by and by." The glossary is given as a long-drawn sigh, an expression of an effort of courage roused to conquer a difficult problem. My clay, my hoary immortal soul, identified throughout its many past incarnations with a mortal physical form and its material perceptions and desires. With long oblivion is gone dry, with long forgetfulness of the soul's divine nature as it is passed through the glooms and joys of past lives. Fill me with the old familiar juice, infuse me with the primordial intuitive wisdom so familiar to the soul and hidden deeply within it. Methinks I might recover, I may thus regain my lost remembrance of my true soul consciousness of perfection and bliss by and by, gradually through steady spiritual endeavor. So it doesn't happen overnight, but when we make that very powerful decision to say yes to spirit, to say yes to a truly spiritualized life, to a yogic lifestyle, not only doing some hatha and breath work, but also some deep daily meditation, advanced meditation such as Kriya Yoga, then we will recover by and by, day, finding ourselves stronger, more devoted, and certainly more successful. Let me take a moment now to return to a hero of ours on the path of meditation, James J. Lin, that yogi who found self-realization, who was also a great businessman. And here a little book on him, Rajarsi Janakanana, James J. Lin, a great Western yogi. And we'll read just a little bit about him. Mr. Lin said, "It is within the power of every one of us to attain true wisdom. We have to make the effort. It is up to us. We must meditate to attain deep faith. After we have received the first contact of God, we should then seek to develop the contact into a greater and greater consciousness." So initially, even in the beginning, if we are very sincere, we can gain a deep sense of the Lord's presence with us and within us, and then day by day deepen that until it becomes an eternal, permanent part of our consciousness and even the essence of our faith. Paramahansaji doesn't ask his students to accept anything as a matter of belief only. Practice Kriya Yoga, he says, and discover for yourself the glories of the soul within. So let us return now to our invisible shark, that one that can certainly molest us if we aren't wise, and certainly we should be on the lookout for it and be aware of how to conquer it, how to avoid it, how to swim beyond it. Then I spotted something unusual. A fish cruised fast between us, dark and aggressive. It was a shark. The unwelcome form was moving so fast that I hadn't been able to identify it till it was directly in front of me. Plunging my spear forward, I impaled the shark with a mighty thrust just behind the gill slit. As soon as my spear went in, the reef shark decided it was in the wrong place, and it accelerated in a wide semicircle around me, streaking into the deeps. As the shark disappeared, I realized that my spear had been pried out of my hands. A shark's skin is extremely durable and difficult to pierce, and in this case I didn't really pierce the skin except for a tiny, tiny little bit. It had landed in the sand below the boat. All of this had happened in the blink of an eye. The guys got into the boat with their prize, and finally Matt asked me, between big smiles — this was his largest black grouper to date, maybe 40 pounds — if the spear he saw below the boat was mine. I said yes, it was. I wasn't sure what you guys did when there was a shark in the water. Somehow, my cousins didn't seem to understand what I had said. With some trepidation, I dove back into the water to retrieve my spear. Cleaning the fish at the dock later that evening, Matt and Josh had a chance to tell their story to a vacationer who had stopped by to chat, inquiring where our grouper had been taken. Matt shared about the multiple dives he had been required to make in order to wrest the big black grouper from its hiding place in the small cave, so he could carry the fish back to the boat. I added, and that's when the shark appeared. Matt stopped filleting and looked up at me with a blank stare. What do you mean? I thought you guys saw that shark. Until that moment, I had been certain that Matt and Josh had been witness to the whole scene. The shark had swum right in front of them before circling toward me and the boat. As Matt began to work his fillet knife again, he studied the flesh in his hands with a quiet expression. I told them that a fast-moving shark had appeared between us, just as Matt and Josh began to swim toward the boat, carrying the carcass of their big black grouper. I mentioned that I had to drive my spear tip partway into the shark's thick skin in order to repel it before the spear was wrested from my hands. My cousins looked up again, contemplating deeply. The silence that followed was sobering. I prayed a silent prayer of gratitude for protection and quick thinking, and for many other graces I think of now. Thank you, Lord, for your constant presence with us and within us. The next chapter is another Bahamas shark, and perhaps we'll pick that up there during our next video. Thank you for your interest. Please stay tuned and share with your friends. And most of all, take a few minutes every day to practice deep silent meditation until you're able to do that for many hours, so that you can find your bluegill. Fearless blues down in my soul, stronger still than rock and roll. It moves so quick, it's gonna save you all kinds of precious time. Your precious time is yours and mine. Now we can find time to pray and meditate. Mother Lakshmi, thank you for your spirituals and all these tender mercies for your commercials with relish. Like Bob Dylan, you and I, underneath this big blue sky, we're gonna go ahead and ask for your generous contributions, daughters and sons of the Most High. Fearless blues down in my soul, stronger still than rock and roll. Move so quick, you know it's gonna save you all kinds of precious time. Now that we found our rhyme sublime, may the Lord guide us by wisdom, love, self-control, and a whole lot of fun.